For the last decade, political actors and grassroots movements have mined the global culture industry for the raw material of their protests. The painted grin of the Joker has appeared on walls and faces in uprisings from Beirut to Santiago. A mask drawn for a dystopian graphic novel became the standing face of the hacktivist collective Anonymous, and eventually a staple for demonstrators everywhere. Naming this operation is where analysis stalls. Academics, strategists, and journalists routinely describe these images using a rotating vocabulary. They are called memes, or culture jamming, or the tactic of Detournement. The terms are treated as interchangeable. They are not interchangeable, and treating them as such creates a critical error. These celebrated symbols are not actual instances of Detournement. They present an illusion of it. Grouping these symbols under a single, loose definition creates an analytical blind spot. Without strict criteria to separate genuine semantic hijacking from simple appropriation, we lose our grip on how political information warfare actually functions in digital networks. To understand the error, we have to look at the original 1950s situationist definition of detournement. It was formulated not as a broad aesthetic gesture, but as a precise dialectical operation against a dominant order. The operation requires two steps. First, you subvert the commodity status of a cultural asset by ripping it out of the commercial market and wielding it unlicensed. Second, you execute a strict inversion of the asset's original intended meaning. The theorists who coined the term were explicit. Without both of these negations occurring simultaneously, the cultural reuse fails the test. This requirement separates the tactic from modern remix culture. In a remix, a creator can recombine assets, add to them, or strip them down. But the new artifact doesn't have to carry a critical charge opposed to its origin. True semantic hijacking requires forcing a benign or antagonistic piece of media to actively argue against its creators. To measure this accurately across modern digital networks, we need a mathematical framework that separates the aesthetic surface of an image from the mechanical operation it performs. This chart plots political reuse across 6 axes: semantic operation, source meaning, target, commodification, authorship, and irony. Apply the Joker mask to this framework. It scores perfectly on targeting an order and opposing commodification, but fails to expand on source meaning. The reason is structural. The source fictions for these characters already encode rebellion against an elite. A protester wearing the Joker mask is preserving the film's message, not inverting it. The three-finger salute from the Hunger Games, adopted by demonstrators across the Milk Tea Alliance, operates the exact same way. It is a pre-encoded sign of resistance to authoritarian power. These are instances of citation. The situationists might classify them as a weak detournement of the medium, turning the commodity against power, but they are not true semantic inversions. Because the meaning is preserved, the symbol travels easily. The mask can be worn by Occupy Wall Street activists and Capitol rioters alike because it requires no localized political heavy lifting to make its point. Transposing an aligned, Hollywood-approved message of rebellion is effective for global broadcasting, but it is a much weaker mechanical operation than hijacking a symbol and forcing it to reverse its own ideology. So what does a successful inversion look like? Dr. Arda Süar's research into the digital public sphere, the kamusal alan, shows us the mechanics in practice. During the 2013 Gezi Park protests in Turkey, traditional media enforced a strict blackout on the demonstrations. Frustrated activists looked for alternative materials. Suar points to their use of Vedat Milor, a highly popular but entirely apolitical television food critic. The protesters ripped the chef's image from its consumer-friendly culinary context and weaponized it to explicitly critique the state media censorship. If we map this Gezi Park hijacking onto our typology, the shape maxes out, hitting the absolute limits of meaning inversion and grassroots authorship. This satisfies the double negation. A pure culture industry commodity is inverted by an anonymous, distributed network to attack the dominant order. When traditional avenues of speech are blocked, the digital network society gives marginalized actors the tools to forge powerful political weapons out of benign pop culture. There is no inherent ideological bias to semantic hijacking. The tactic is completely politically orthogonal. Left-wing movements might hijack an anime character to protest austerity in South America, but right-wing digital operations use the exact same mechanics to consolidate majoritarian power. We see this clearly in the mimetic recoding of Pepe the Frog. Anonymous online networks took an innocuous cartoon amphibian and systematically inverted its meaning, forcing it to operate as a white nationalist emblem. Compare the structural footprint of the right-wing meme campaign against the left-wing Gezi Park inversion. On the typology, their mathematical footprint is structurally identical. Treating pop culture appropriation as an exclusively emancipatory tool creates a severe analytical failure. It assumes the emancipatory pedigree of the concept provides an immunity to reactionary use. To recognize and combat sophisticated information warfare from the far right, we have to decouple the mechanics of the tactic from its political morality. The final vulnerability in the modern era is what the situationists called recuperation, where the dominant order absorbs and neutralizes an active rebellion. The architecture of platform capitalism inherently monetizes grassroots rebellion. If an anti-commodity protest goes viral, the infrastructure converts that oppositional energy into profitable data streams for tech companies. Even more dangerous is the authorial threat. The critical access of grassroots authorship is now actively faked from the top down. Heads of state, political campaigns, and partisan operations now manufacture organic-looking pop culture memes at scale, distributing them to simulate a groundswell of support. When established powers mimic the motions of Detournement, they capture the posture of speaking from below without actually challenging the dominant order. True semantic hijacking now fights a brutal two-front war. It fights the political systems it seeks to dismantle and the digital architecture explicitly designed to manufacture and resell the illusion of its own rebellion.